Man, how about Easter last week? That was wild. I don't know if you guys knew this. That was our largest service of all time, ever, which is crazy. I think we had over 300 people in the building, which was insane. So praise God, just a lot of people encountering God, getting to connect with you, some of my favorite people on the planet, and hear the gospel. I mean, what an incredible Sunday. So what a testament to let's continue inviting people in, because church is not just an event, it's a community to be a part of. And God's goal for you is that you would encounter God, become a follower of Jesus or a disciple of Jesus, and that you would grow with other people in how to change the world and who God's made you to be. And my goal, cards on the table, is that the longer you're here at our church, the more you would just naturally get sucked into that process. All right? And so just laying my cards, man, that is my goal for you. God loves you, and I have a wonderful plan for your life. All right? So I'm just going to, at least be up front and tell you what the plan is. All right? So get involved, come to the Next Steps lunch, come to Connect class, do all this stuff, and just plug in and see what God does in your life. Amen? Amen. Well, I already gave you the parental warning. You know where we're going today. Song of Solomon, Song of Songs. Anybody like rom-coms in the room? Come on, rom-coms. Guys, don't sleep on the rom-coms. Fellas, don't sleep on the rom-coms. I'm curious. I thought we would take a vote as a church what our church's collective favorite rom-coms are. So just shout out some of your favorites, and I'll pick a few, and we'll vote on them. All right, so just shout out some of your favorite rom-coms. Okay, I didn't hear the one everyone's laughing about. I heard Notting Hill, Julia Roberts, Hugh Grant. Come on. Okay, give me another one. Okay, I heard 10 Things I Hate About You. Heath Ledger, Julia Stiles. Okay, one more. How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Great choice. Matthew McConaughey. It's wild. You guys picked my 3 favorite rom-coms. I'm just being honest, I didn't hear you guys say any of those. Okay, so which of these 3 do we like the most? Who likes the first one I said, which is blanking now that I'm saying it? Notting Hill. Come on, you can't miss out on Scuba Steve. Scuba Steve is a fire character. Nobody, we got 1 vote. Okay, 10 Things I Hate About You is a classic, iconic 80s, 90s rom-com. Lastly, How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Matthew McConaughey, let's go. That's fire. We have decided that is our favorite rom-com. Here's the thing that I think about romantic comedies, all right? Rom-coms they're an interesting slice of our culture, aren't they? Because they, present in some ways a very idealized version of love, right? There's so many examples that we could pick from of just these amazing love stories and the chase of building this romance and connecting and all of that that is good and is amazing. The thing that's interesting about rom-coms is most don't include a wedding, and even if they do, that's the end of the movie. Isn't that interesting? Most of the movie is the chase of getting the girl to be interested. And they all have a similar flow, don't they? It's like the pursuit, and then there's always a crisis where they kind of seem like maybe it's not going to work out, and then there's the chase to the airport to go declare your love for them. Come on. Every rom-com has some version of that. There's the chase, then there's the crisis, and then there's the declaration of love and win her back. What's interesting is that is where the movie ends. It doesn't go anywhere past, if it even includes a wedding at all, it doesn't go past that part. It's the thing, the interesting thing is it's like Hollywood believes that the most interesting part of any relationship comes before the wedding. Right? That's what they appear to believe. And they appear to believe that nothing interesting happens after the wedding. Well, the biblical picture of a relationship is the opposite. Is that the most interesting and exciting part, the part that's actually an adventure, comes after the wedding. It's the adventure doesn't end at the wedding, it starts at the wedding. And so we're going to talk about in Song of Songs or Song of Solomon, this book. It's a very unique and interesting book in the Bible that is all about marriage and romance and, yes, physical intimacy as well. And so let's dig into our Bible breakdown for Song of Solomon. Let's jump in. To catch us up, Last week, you can go, yeah, thank you, yeah. Okay, so Song of Solomon is one of the poetic books. You might notice we're a little out of order in the canonical order of the books, and there is a reason to the madness. The reason is I want to keep the poetry together and keep the wisdom books together. So we did Psalms last week. Now we're doing Song of Songs, which is another poetic book. It was written, not like Psalms. Psalms was written over the period of 1,000 years. And Psalms is like 150 poems written over 1,000 years. Well, Song of Songs is one poem by a guy with 1,000 wives. So interesting, dynamic here. I want to tell you, there is a lot that is up for debate with the Song of Solomon. There's a heated debate among conservative scholars and liberal scholars and historical scholars and all these different people about, okay, who actually wrote it, what's going on here. But generally, the book claims that Solomon wrote it, and there are no major reasons to believe that that's not the case, except the fact that Solomon had 1,000 wives and seems to be writing this poem about one very specific wife. So that's kind of the main reason people think, hey, I don't know if a guy like that could write this. But if you think, well, hey, Solomon could have written this at the beginning before he had 1,000 wives. Right after he prays, he asks God for wisdom. God grants him supernatural wisdom, and he starts Israel's wisdom tradition. It is very plausible that he wrote this during that initial period of time. And so he writes this book called Song of Solomon, and the technical name, the actual name is Song of Songs, and it's in the very beginning. The first line of the book is Song of Songs, a Song of Solomon. And what this means is it's like the ultimate song, like King of Kings. What does that mean? It's the ultimate King, Lord of Lords, the ultimate Lord, right? The Holy of Holies is the most holy place. Well, the same way, this poem claims to be the ultimate song about married romance. That's what this book claims. Now, I want to tell you that last week I said that the Psalms were like the Spotify of the Bible. The Spotify of the Bible, right? Because whatever you're going through, there's a playlist and a genre for you. Well, Song of Psalms is not the Spotify. It's a very specific song. Come on now. Nobody wants to move a little bit? I mean, come on. I know it's a primarily white church. It's okay. Come on. We will get some rhythm into you somehow. Come on, our ethnic friends, we need you to help us get some culture. Come on, Marvin Gaye, man. You can't move to Marvin Gaye. Lead us. Yes, okay, so Song of Songs is one collective poem. There are some people who think it's a collection of random poems because the plot is a little bit difficult to follow. But generally, it's considered one poem, one song that is 8 chapters long about marital love and, yes, sex, okay? As far as poems go, the book is pretty explicit. There are some chapters that you read and you're like, whoa. Like I remember as a teenage Christian boy, okay, reading the Song of Psalms was like, do people know I have this? Like, am I allowed to be reading this right now? This is crazy. There are just poetic descriptions of the woman's body in different ways, and there are poetic descriptions of sex happening in this book. And so, it's very graphic in its own way of marriage, of a relationship, and yes, physical intimacy. The structure, really quick, again, there's a lot up to debate, but general consensus is there's 3 major parts. One is the courtship, where the man is pursuing the woman, and actually the woman is also pursuing the man. They're pursuing one another. And then in the middle, which is kind of the crux of the entire poem, is the wedding and the consummation. And this is where they come together. They're celebrating the bliss of their love and all of these things. And really the whole poem kind of points from front and back to this center section of the wedding and the consummation. And then interestingly, the third part is kind of the maturing process of love. And while the plot can be difficult to follow, what's not difficult to follow is that the themes that start at the beginning, they get matured as the poem goes. And so in the third part, it's, you might be like, well, okay, like what's the action happening? But what you can see is that the themes that were introduced are now maturing. They're growing in their commitment. They're growing in their intimacy. They're growing in their love for one another. And so you see this picture of a love growing and developing. Ultimately, the book ends open-ended. And so you're kind of like, wait, like there's no like bow at the end. There's no happily ever after. Like what happens at the end? And I think this is intentional that is what a marriage looks like. It's open-ended. It's like, hey, are you going to continue on the path of developing and maturing in this love, or will you not? And so in some ways, the poem acts as a challenge or an invitation. Interestingly, the reason that in our Bibles, Song of Solomon or Song of Songs is with Proverbs and Ecclesiastes and Job and Psalms is that all of these were in the Old Testament considered to be wisdom literature. They were wisdom literature. The Psalms were wisdom about how to live a life holy with God, and the Song of Songs was wisdom about how to live in wise romance, how to have a good marriage. And so in some ways, it is instructive. It's not just a nice poem. It's instructive about how to have a healthy marriage, how to have a healthy family. In fact, there's some evidence that during the season of Passover in the Jewish calendar, families would read the Song of Solomon to their families. That the synagogues would read the Song of Songs during Passover to these families in their synagogues. So you have children hearing about these very graphic poems about things happening. You're like, man, what is the deal with that? But it's interesting because Solomon, he writes this not just as an expression of his own love for this woman. He writes this as wisdom for his people. Hey, I want my people to have healthy marriages. He knows that a society can only be as healthy as the health of the families, and the families can only be as healthy as the health of the marriage. And I feel that for us. I think I want for us as a church to have healthy families. And if you want a healthy family, you need a healthy marriage. You've got to invest in your marriage. I think there's so many challenges that some of us face because our parents didn't maybe have the language to show us what a good family and marriage looks like. One thing that's been very common today, especially among millennials and younger, is that you learn sex through the internet. You didn't learn it from your parents. You learned it from social media or pornography or movies or your idiot 12-year-old friends in middle school who also know just as little as you do. And Solomon is basically saying, hey, I don't want that to be the case in our society. I want families to be able to talk to their kids about how to have healthy marriages and healthy love lives and healthy intimacy, and it's important that we know and have language to describe this. And so that is one of Solomon's goals here and why it's considered wisdom literature. Now, my Bible breakdown is going to be a little short today because kind of the message is going to be a survey of the entire book. There's some major themes that I'm just going to cover throughout. So let's just jump into one specific passage, not the most graphic passage, but I think you'll get the drift of what it's talking about. All right, this is Song of Psalms, chapter 4. This is right in the middle of that marriage and consummation section of the book. Now, there are characters. So this is the male character talking in verse 12. He says, a locked garden is my sister, my bride. Now, he's being poetic here. He's not saying this is actually my sister, but he's saying, hey, there's an affection here and a closeness here. Like that. A locked garden is my sister, my bride, a spring locked, a fountain sealed. Your shoots, like he's using plant language. Your shoots are an orchard of pomegranates with all choicest fruits. Henna with nard. These are like fragrant senses and things like that. Nard and saffron, calamus and cinnamon with all trees of frankincense. Myrrh and aloes with all choice spices. A garden fountain, a well of living water, and flowing streams from Lebanon. Awake, O north wind, O come, O south wind, blow upon my garden, let spices flow. And then the woman responds, she says, let my beloved come to his garden and eat its choicest fruits. Now, I don't think they have to be explicit, but I hope you know what they're talking about. This is very sensual. It's very euphemistic. If you follow me, they're describing sex, okay? This is what is happening here. The man responds, I came into my garden, my sister, my bride. I gathered my myrrh with my spice. I ate my honeycomb with my honey. I drank my wine with my milk. What does he say? Hey, I enjoyed the fruit of my marriage. We drank our fill of love all night is kind of what he's attempting to explain. Now, here's one of the things I want to draw our attention to is the garden language throughout the book. There is this imagery of a garden in the beginning, here in the middle, and there's garden imagery in the end. And I don't think this is accidental. I think this is deliberate. The author is placing the entire poem inside the story of Eden, the most famous garden in the Bible. Now, why would he do that? Why would he do that? I think he's very intentional to point back to the Garden of Eden. In fact, the very last verse in Genesis before the fall happens is in Genesis chapter 2, and it's this very idyllic language of what life was like before the fall. In Genesis 2, it says, and the man and wife were both naked and were not ashamed. Here, Song of Solomon is pointing to that reality and saying, hey, in an ideal way, a godly marriage points to that. Now, you might be thinking like, hey, well, that was before the fall. We don't live before the fall. We live after the fall. And so, man, is that even possible? In fact, when Adam and Eve, when they sin against God, they eat from the fruit they're not supposed to. Do you remember what it says? It says, immediately, their eyes were opened and they realized they were naked. Now, what's interesting, I was thinking about this week. It doesn't say who realized who was naked. It just says they realized. It kind of makes you wonder, like did Eve realize Adam was naked? Like, I thought you had a six-pack before. Like, something's off about you. Something's different. You know, it's like Adam looks over like, I thought your laugh used to be cute. Why is it annoying? You know what I'm talking about? It's kind of like the honeymoon you go through in marriage. Afterward, you're like, this thing that used to be very endearing is now super annoying. What's wrong with you? Why are you like this? Come on, am I the only, like, married person in the room? I'm mostly just telling you what my wife says about me. You know, it's not the opposite. But it's interesting. Genesis said before the fall, there was this ultimate vulnerability in marriage, but no shame. You could be fully known, fully seen, and there was no judgment or shame involved. That's a very difficult thing for us to imagine, isn't it? Because all of our daily lives are filled with shame, fear, hiding. If we're vulnerable at all, it is very strategic in a short period of time. But Song of Solomon, I think, is pointing back to Eden. Why? Because he's saying, hey, marriage actually restores something that was lost. A godly marriage. Song of Songs paints this ideal picture that marriage, when done in a way that honors God, a godly marriage actually restores something from the Garden of Eden that was lost in the fall. Even modern love songs. You listen to modern love songs, and they have a picture that this is true, right? The lyrics that people use in modern love songs are so extreme, right? You think like, you are the actual literal air that I breathe, and if you walk away, I'll suffocate to death. And you're like, man, really? Like, okay, man, like, you're 14. We get it. You haven't seen much of life yet. You know, you don't know how this works. But it's so extreme, isn't it? Because there's this sense that, like, love and marriage has the possibility to bring back this amazing thing that was lost. And sex is a part of that restoration. Song of Solomon, one of the interesting things is it's not shy about sex. It's not tiptoeing around it. It's very clear, hey, this is awesome, and it's a gift from God to married people. It's part of the thing that restores this joy from before the fall. In sex, there's this kind of, it's this like this peak fulfillment of joy and delight and connection and vulnerability with no shame that we experience in marriage. Sex is the ultimate physical expression in marriage of vulnerability without shame. Now, here's the thing about gardens. Our family planted a garden in our backyard last year. This is our second year planting and kind of, getting the season going. We've got tomatoes and we've got sweet potatoes and peppers. I think we've planted a few new things this year. But the thing about gardens is you have to water them consistently. You have to pay a lot of attention to them. You have to give a lot of time to the gardens. You have to water them. You have to pull weeds. You have to dig out the root rot. In fact, we found some like fungus around. We had to pull that out and cleaned it up. And what does that tell us about gardens? They don't happen by accident. Gardens do not happen by accident. Song of Solomon uses this picture. It says, hey, love, marriage, a godly marriage is like a garden. Guess what? It will not happen by accident. It takes intention. It takes time. It takes energy. It takes focus. It takes your resources. You cannot fall into it by accident. You know what happens by accident? Weeds, thorns, thistles. But a godly, good marriage does not happen by accident. If you neglect your yard for weeks and come back to expect a nice, trimmed rose garden, you'd be a crazy person. No one would expect that you can do this. Why? Because we know these good things do not happen by accident. And marriage is the same way. You have to till, plant, water, prune, protect consistently over time. Now, there's 3 buckets. And I realize I'm mainly talking to married people today, but I trust that there will be some nuggets that single people, divorced people, if you're in a healthy or a broken place, there will be something that God is speaking to you, even though we're primarily talking to married people. And so there are 3 buckets that a godly marriage is meant to have filled consistently over time. 3 buckets that need filled. The first is your commitment level. This is the covenant of marriage. I do forever, no matter what. That is what marriage is. It is a commitment. It says, I, in front of all my family and friends and before God, I commit my entire life to you, which is a bonkers promise to make because you don't really know the person yet. It's like not till after that you realize, man, this is super weird. Like, you get hangnails. And, man, when you wake up in the morning, your hair is not perfect. Like, what is wrong with you? You know, man, you put the dishes wrong in the dishwasher. Like, who trained you? You know what I'm saying? But this marriage, you make these wild promises to one another. Why? Because you're committing your life. Say, hey, no matter what happens, I'm all in. I'm all in. Now, the way marriage is meant to happen is that you fill that bucket first. You commit. And then you get to fill the other buckets of emotional intimacy and physical intimacy. Because they are at pace, they are pacing with your commitment level. Your commitment level matches your ability to fill the emotional and physical intimacy buckets. You guys tracking with me? Now, what do we do in modern dating? We do the opposite. I'm going to not pour anything in the commitment bucket, but I want all of the physical intimacy bucket. And then guess what? I can just leave tomorrow, and there will be 0 consequences. This is not healthy. This is not God's picture, and it's not because God is holding out on you. It's actually because God has something better for you. See, what happens in hookup culture over time, what you are doing is you're actually training for broken relationships. When you give yourself fully and you say, hey, here, you can fill the emotional intimacy bucket, you can fill the physical intimacy bucket, but there's no commitment. Guess what? You break that off, and then you just go find the next one. So you go through this cycle of vulnerability, leave, vulnerability, brokenness, vulnerability, shame. What are you doing? You're training to have broken relationships. You're training yourself that, hey, when things don't work out, we leave. It's over. And some of us, you've been going cycle after cycle after cycle, and you think, man, it's the person's fault. And they might have something to do with it, but it might be, hey, you've been training yourself your entire life for broken relationships. And so God's picture of marriage is, hey, you do not owe anyone the ability to fill the emotional intimacy bucket or the physical intimacy bucket until they have first filled the commitment bucket. Why? That is to protect you. It's not because God is holding out on you. It's because he wants the best for you. Do you see that? Now, we can do this even as married people. Hey, my commitment bucket is full. And as a man, I don't need to touch that emotional one. Emotions are scary. But I'm still going to need you to fill the physical bucket, however often. And no. We leave you to fill that blank for yourself. I almost said a number, and I wasn't going to do that. See, I have some self-control. Some of y'all think I can't hold my tongue, and I can, okay? You'll see on Sex Sunday, I can hold my tongue. A little bit, at least. But we do this. Stereotypically, okay? Not everyone fits this, but stereotypically, the wives want to fill the emotion bucket. The guys want to fill the physical bucket. And they say that a single woman's whole life, she's been dreaming of her wedding day. Well, a single man's whole life, he's been dreaming of the wedding night. And the same is true in marriage. It can be tempting to get into a routine where, again, stereotypically, and you might blend this a little bit in yourself and your makeup or whatever. There are women with stronger sex drives than men, and that can be totally fine. There's nothing broken with you. But generally speaking, you can get into a routine where the guy just wants to, hey, I checked certain boxes, I get sex. And the wives are like, no, I want this. And the guy's like, hey, it's like this tug of war between one and the other. And the biblical picture in Song of Solomon is it doesn't pit one against the other. Song of Solomon says, hey, you need both. The pursuit, the chase, and the physical connection. You need both. And so I wonder where you need to maybe level the playing field as a married couple. Is there an area, maybe you have the physical connection but not the emotional connection, or maybe you're the opposite. We've got the emotional connection but not the physical connection. 1 Corinthians, Paul encourages married couples. He says, hey, do not deprive one another of sex. Why? Because your body is not your own. When you get married, you're giving yourself to the other person. And this is in the context of his challenge to a husband to lay down his life for his wife. So he's not just saying, hey, the wife, you got to sacrifice and you just need to give your husband sex whenever he wants. No, he says, hey, you both lay down your lives for one another. You both give yourselves to one another. This is not an overpowering. It's a mutual submission to one another. It's a mutual sacrifice. It's a mutual giving to one another. Which brings me to, in the Old Testament, one of the most interesting euphemisms the Bible uses for sex is the word to know. To know. You may have read sections of the Bible where it says Adam knew his wife and she became pregnant. Jacob knew his wife and she became pregnant. You're like, that's a weird way to say that. But the Hebrew word is yada, to know. And it literally just means to know in every sense of the word. So there are other times where it doesn't mean sex. It means like, hey, God knew you before you were even in the womb. God knew you. It's the same word. And it's this picture that the ultimate the deepest place of a relationship is not just physical intimacy, it's holistic intimacy, that you know a person in the fullest sense. That is the ultimate place for a relationship to be. Knowledge is the deepest category. What's interesting about knowledge, or yada, you can't accomplish that in an afternoon. It takes time. It takes consistency, like a garden. It carries the weight of accumulated experience. This is why the same word, yada, is used for Israel's long covenant history with God. Real intimacy in marriage is not an event, it's a project. Which is another problem with hookup culture. It's like you're getting a GED with a person over and over and over, but in marriage, you're getting a PhD. You know what I'm talking about? It's like you're going to go figure this out for the first time with a new person every time, or you could become a master guru at sex with the same person over and over and over. I mean, that is God's picture of, hey, like, why would you start over at the basics with all these random people? Man, become an expert with the same person over and over and over. And it's part of God's design that in a marriage, it's not just physical and it's not just emotion. It's you know someone. And the thing about knowing someone or intimacy or connection, as guys, maybe the word intimacy scares us off. We're like, man, I don't like that. Well, just think connection. Connection is kind of the same idea. Intimacy is not a box you check and you just keep it forever. You're like, oh yeah, we had that 20 years ago. We're good. It carries with us. No. You may have had a moment or a season, but if you're not consistently investing in it, it will die. Because why? Love is like a garden. if you don't till the garden and take care of the garden, it gets overrun with weeds and it dies. And so a marriage, a godly marriage, takes work. Now, Song of Songs, because of this picture of marriage and sex, it combats two extremes. On one hand, hookup culture, sex is meaningless. I can do it with whoever I want and there is no consequences. It is very against that. Hey, sex is not cheap. It's not disposable. On the other hand, maybe some of us more religious folks who think, maybe we wouldn't even say this, but we feel the way that we talk. We think, hey, sex is like, it's a dirty thing. You don't talk about it. And this is why maybe we got purity culture in the 90s. We thought, hey, let's just put a bow on this. I don't want to talk about this. I'll just give you a book. And we're just scared. And we think if we ever bring this up, it's like we're going to hell. And Song of Songs says, no, that's not true either. This is a beautiful gift to be celebrated that is for your good, and it's from God. There's nothing to be avoided or feel guilty about in marriage. Now, I remember before I got married, as a single guy, reading Song of Solomon, again, feeling like, looking like, do people know I'm reading this, I remember you read it as a young man, and it's just like, blah, 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 sex, blah, 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 sex, blah, blah. It's like all you can see, And it's just like, oh, man, that's going to be awesome, when I'm married and this and that. And now, as a married person, as a married man, I read through Song of Songs. And it's like, yeah, that's in there. That's for sure in there. But what I am most convicted about as I read about the man pursuing the woman, celebrating the woman, appreciating and delighting in the woman. Now, as I read this, I'm like, man, I don't think I appreciate my wife as much as she deserves. Man, I mean, like, just the imagery is like, man, God has given me an incredible gift in this godly woman that he's given me. And man, am I seeing that accurately? Because why? Marriage is this full picture to know someone intimately. And so my question for you to wrestle with is, if my marriage is like a garden and my spouse is like a garden, well, what does my spouse's garden need right now? What have I not been giving? Are there seeds that I have not been sowing that need? Is there fruit or that I've been harvesting that we don't like? What do I need to be planting? And you might shift from what do I need to what do they need in order to flourish? You see, the big idea here is a lot of people are married, but not a lot of people are gardening. Are you gardening? Now, Song of Songs also gives us a warning. Right in the middle of the most idyllic portion of the song is this warning in chapter 2:15. He says, catch the foxes for us, the little foxes that spoil the vineyard, for our vineyards are in blossom. So again, poetic language, but there's this warning that while the orchard or the vineyard is in full blossom, in other words, during the peak of our love together, there is also a threat. And if we don't pay attention to the threat, then it can ruin the whole thing. The thing about these foxes is it doesn't say that they're these huge cataclysmic events. They're small things. They're small things. And if you don't pay attention to the small things, they build up and they ruin the whole thing. Here's the big idea. It's rarely the huge, big stuff that kills your marriage. It's usually the small stuff that we stop paying attention to that ruins your marriage. And so I want to give you some examples. What are some foxes that you can protect against? And I think anyone in this room, married or not, will gain something from this. In the 80s and 90s, there was a sociologist, a marriage scientist named John Gottman who did this experiment where he built this apartment in Seattle, and he invited couples to be a part of this experiment, and he told them about it. This is kind of like maybe the original Love is Blind, except it wasn't like live on TV. And so he would hook them up to sensors where he could sense their heart rate, even he could sense their perspiration and their blood pressure and all those kinds of things. And other than that, the apartment was totally normal. They would cook, they'd clean, they would live there for a weekend, and there were cameras everywhere for them to track every little interaction. And at some point in the weekend, he would instruct them, hey, I want you to bring up a topic that has caused friction in your marriage. And then he would watch, and his team of researchers would watch as they interacted, and they would categorize every word and phrase to see what is going on in this marriage. What's the dynamic in this relationship? And then after the experiment was over, They tracked them for 30 years to see how healthy and successful that marriage was. And after this whole long period of time, he found these results and said, hey, I can actually predict a divorce with 97% accuracy based on 4 things. And these 4 things he called the 4 horsemen of the relational apocalypse. The 4 horsemen are this: criticism, contempt, defensiveness, and stonewalling. Criticism, which is the gateway into these others, is, it's like, hey, you can't do this right. You can't do this right. You're always doing this. What's wrong with you? Well, and it's too critical and negative, and it's the gateway to these others. Now, the most deadly of the 4 is contempt. And he said, hey, if I can see contempt in a 15-minute conversation, I can predict with 97% accuracy, you will get divorced. What is contempt? Contempt is when these small grievances calcify into a fundamental disrespect for your spouse as a person. It's where, hey, you're not worth my time and energy. You are below me. And when you get into living like that with your spouse, your marriage is as good as dead. It's just waiting for the divorce certificate at that point. Now, defensiveness is when I refuse to take your input honestly and I deflect. And stonewalling is where I just shut down and I eject from the conversation. I say, I'm not talking about this anymore. I'm not talking about this anymore. Now, by default, probably all of us gravitate toward one of these in different ways, or maybe a combination of these. And these are good to pay attention to. Where are you experiencing these in your relationship? Even if you're not married, you might think, hey, where do I experience these in my friendships? The reality is a lot of these are fruit issues rather than root issues. If you look at like a garden or a tree, fruits are the product of the health of the roots. And so the fruits can be helpful to show you, hey, that apple's rotten. I think there's a problem with the roots. Let's go address the root. But if you just try to fix the apple, let's duct tape and put a Band-Aid on the apple, that's not going to solve the problem. And so these 4 horsemen can be like fruits that point you, hey, I think there's a deeper issue. By the way, I would not use this in a fight like this. You're fighting with your spouse. You're just saying that because you have root rot and there are deeper problems and that's why you're being critical. I wouldn't start there. What I would do is when you're not fighting, you're like, hey, I've noticed you seem a little more critical than normal. What's going on? Because your goal is to get under the surface. Now, this is not exhaustive by any means, but I want to give you some key areas where you might be experiencing root rot that lead to fruit problems. Number 1 is resentment. Resentment is when you do not forgive and you allow unforgiveness to build and accumulate over time. When the little things, and you start reading into the little things as if you can read your spouse's mind. Oh, you're doing that because you hate me and you fundamentally disrespect me. That could be true, but it also could be true that that's not the case, right? We read in, we don't forgive, and it's what the key is to forgive. God, you've forgiven me, so I need to forgive this person. God, I'm covered in the blood of Jesus, so I need to cover my spouse in the blood of Jesus in the same way. Number 2 is secret sin. If there's secret sin in your life that you are withholding and not dealing with, man, that is serious root rot. So whether it is an addiction like pornography or masturbation or an affair or even something non-sexual in nature, you have a gambling problem, a substance abuse, just something that you are secretly giving your life to, what you're doing is you are giving a piece of yourself to this thing instead of to your spouse. And the key there is to confess, get full openness with your spouse and with a key group of people who are in your corner and get victory. And so when you have secret sin, you confess and you work for victory. These are all kind of related, but I'm just putting some names on these. Number 3 is avoidance. If you are avoiding key areas or topics in your marriage, Dennis Peacock, he says that your relationship can only go as deep as what you're not allowed to talk about. Your relationship can only go as deep as what you're not allowed to talk about that. Some of you have like a roommate or a sibling or a friend that you realize, guys, hey, yeah, we can only talk about basketball. That's as deep as this relationship can go. We can only talk about sports, or we can only talk about shopping. We can't talk about you struggling with this thing. We can't talk about faith, right? We can't talk about politics. It's surface level. And that is as deep as your relationship can be until you open up and press in and ask some awkward questions the same way in a marriage. Your relationship can only go as deep as what you're not allowed to talk about. I've realized as a recovering passive husband, there are a lot of things I would prefer not to talk about because it just feels like, oh man, that is a historical argument. I don't want to go there again. That's going to be too hard. I don't know if I have what it takes. Let me tell you, one of the most healthy things that you can do as a married person is to rip the Band-Aid off of a historically difficult topic and deal with it. Because bullet wounds don't get solved with Band-Aids. They get solved with surgery. Surgery is painful, but is the best long-term solution for a bullet wound. And if there's something that is like that in your marriage or in your relationships, it will only fester the longer it is covered up. And so the best thing that you can do is to rip that Band-Aid off and deal with it. Now the last, again, these are all very similar, but the fourth one is what I'm just going to call stealing from your spouse. And I don't mean money, but if you are stealing money from your spouse, please stop. Not a good practice. What I mean is those tanks, whether it's physical or emotional, if you hit a roadblock with your spouse, it can be tempting to think, oh, I'm not getting this from my spouse anymore. I will go somewhere else. And that might lead to a physical affair, which is very bad news. But it might be things that seem harmless on the surface. You're getting your emotional needs met from a coworker instead of going to your spouse. You're getting your emotional needs met from a romance novel instead of your spouse. You're getting your physical needs met somewhere else. I mean, you're stealing from your spouse. And what you're doing is you're bringing half of a relationship to your marriage now because you're getting this filled from somewhere you're not meant to get this filled from. Guys, sometimes we do this just in getting filled with work. Oh man, marriage is hard. You know what's not hard? Work. I can be productive. I can throw myself in there. And then what do? You give all of your best energy outside the home and you come back and you give your scraps to your wife and your kids and you wonder why you're not experiencing this abundant Garden of Eden in your home. Because what you're doing is you're stealing from your spouse. And so these are small foxes that slowly become big wreckage. And what our goal is to catch them early. Catch them early and deal with them so they don't build and accumulate over time. Now, I want to kind of wrap this up, and I'm going to invite the worship team and the ministry team up. I want to wrap this up talking to some of you who have not been tracking with me the entire time. Half of you, some percentage of you in the room, you're happily married. And you're like, this is great, this is helpful, tips for later today. Praise God. Gonna put some Marvin Gaye on later. But a lot of us in this room, doesn't feel like good news. It feels like a painful reminder of something we will never have. Now, I don't think that is the case, but that's what it feels like, hearing about the Garden of Eden and marriage restores the garden, and you're like, well, yeah, but not for me. To you, your experience of love and sexuality has primarily been through the lens of damage. Abuse, assault. In a room this size, the stats are clear that someone here has experienced very intense sexual abuse in the category of illegal. And that is serious. And I don't want to gloss over that. And if you have experienced that, it is critical that you are able to share that with someone who can help you. Maybe somebody in this room can be the starting point to open up and share what has happened in your life. Honestly, in a room this size, statistically, it was probably when you were a child, which is one of the most unjust things you can possibly imagine. But whether that was you or maybe you're on the spectrum somewhere before that, love and sexuality has been defined by damage for you. And you carry profound shame. You carry years of decisions that you can't undo any longer. The garden imagery hasn't felt like hope. It's felt like something you can never have. Well, here's what I want to tell you. Ephesians 5, Paul is talking to married people, and he drops this little nugget of reality about how Jesus works with broken people. He's talking to husbands. He says, hey, husbands, love your wives just like Christ loved the church. And pay attention to the way he describes Jesus. He says, Jesus gave himself for the church. Now, biblically, the church is described as the bride of Christ. Now, why does Jesus give himself up for the church, the bride of Christ? So that, for the purpose of sanctifying her. The word sanctify means to make something that is not holy, holy. To make something that is broken, whole. To take something damaged and undamage it. That's what it means. So Jesus gives his life for broken people who have shame, who have baggage, who have fear about the future, about relationships, who have all these kinds of dangerous and damaged things, and he fixes them. He heals them. He restores them. That's what Jesus does. And then he says, having cleansed her, his bride, the church, by the washing of water with the word, so that he might present the church to himself in splendor, without spot, without wrinkle, or any such thing, that she might be holy and without blemish. Who is he talking about? He's talking about you. And he's especially talking about those of you in this room who felt like I was not talking to you most of this message until right now. He's talking about you. He's saying, hey, one of my favorite things to do is I take people like you and I give my life. I invest my entire being into restoring you, healing you, fixing and restoring what was lost, sanctifying you. You might think, hey, I'm far from spotless. I'm far from being without blemish. I'm not holy. I've got a lot of wrinkles. But you know what Jesus wants to tell you today? You will be holy. You will be spotless. If you let me do my thing in your life, you will be. You can be. There is hope for your future. I want to tell you, Jesus doesn't receive the perfect bride. He makes one. He doesn't receive perfect people. He makes them. And so if you've got brokenness in your life, guess what? You're in the best possible place you can be. Because Jesus' favorite thing to do is take broken people and heal them. Remember, like I said last week, Jesus doesn't make bad people good. He takes dead people and makes them alive. And he can do the same thing in your areas of romance, areas where you've been betrayed in the past. He can restore what was lost. And ultimately, in church history, there are two ways to interpret the Song of Songs. The primary way is the way we've been interpreting. It is a love poem between a husband and wife. But historically, the church has always interpreted a second layer to this book. That as the union between Christ and the bride of Christ, the church, which is all of us. Now, I realize, men, that makes us very uncomfortable, but this is good. This is for our benefit. The intimacy described in the Song of Solomon finds its fulfillment in the union of Christ and the church. Every human marriage is merely a shadow of this reality that is more real. And the staggering implication is this, that Jesus, the bridegroom, paid the bride price. He pays the dowry for a bride who has been with everyone else. That's the Old Testament picture. Is that, hey, we have given ourselves to every other thing, but Jesus says, hey, guess what? I will buy you back and restore you anyways. He takes a betrayed and broken garden and says, hey, she is mine and I am hers, and I will make her holy and perfect. And so if you have sexual brokenness in your life, you've got shame, you've got trauma, you've got years of waking love before its time, I want to tell you there's hope for the future. It doesn't come primarily through better habits, even just through things like therapy, although that can be extremely helpful. It comes through being known by Jesus. It comes through being known by the one whose knowing does not destroy you. To be known, to the word yada, to be known by Christ is to be seen in your most exposed and broken state and hear him say, you are my garden and I'm coming for you. I will cultivate the life of God in you. And so during this ministry time, as we close our service, we're going to sing a worship song together. And if God is prompting something in you and you're feeling like, man, I need that. I want that in my life. I want God to work in my life in that way. I'm stuck and I don't know what to do about it. Would you come up and we'd love to pray with you and see what God would do. Our prayer team has been praying for you all week, and this is what we sense that God wants to do and meet you in. But if there's anything else that you would like prayer for, please come up and we'd love to pray with you.